This is part 5 on the rockets in Ukraine, and it's on rpg2. Now, I've looked at several sources on it, and they all have different dates, ranging from 1948 to 1964 is the first date of the rpg2. So I don't know. I put it at 1957 because the most reliable looking source that I found said 1957, and introduced into service in 1962. The rpg2 is made in nearly every country on the planet, and this is not a joke. People make rpg2s in their basements all the time. The main components of an RPG warhead are a metal cone and a metal can. The fins on the thing, well, it depends on the type that you get. Some of these are fin driven, where it's a type of fin that extends out as soon as it leaves the barrel, as in they're up against the body of it and then they fold away from it. And some of them, it's some spring steel that basically, as they put it in the tube, they twist it as they put it in. And as soon as it comes out, those fins basically pop away from the body and engage immediately. The rpg2 is unlike the rpg7. Now, of the rocket propelled stuff, and RPG doesn't stand for rocket propelled, except in case the bazooka and the rpg7. Most of these are not rocket propelled, they're charge propelled. And a lot of them that are rocket assisted, it's rocket assisted. That means that it's already left the tube, or the barrel, if you want to call it that. It's already left the tube before the rocket engages. So the rpg2, one of the important things to remember about it is that it runs off of the Davis, well, I shouldn't say the Davis system, we'll call it the Panzerfaust system. And we really should make a differentiating, what's the word I was using? Fuck it, it don't matter. But obviously the rpg2 is an external tube type. The projectile is on the outside of the tube, and that's more dangerous because you're more likely to hit the tip on something. They usually have screw-on caps for them. The rpg2 can be made in a third world country. You can make it in a mud hut. Yeah, no lie. You can make an rpg2 with basic hand tools. You can make a knockoff rpg2 with basic hand tools. So, the rpg2, the real difference, the only real difference between it and the Panzerfaust 150, as far as the design goes, is the trigger housing. The rest of it is nearly a perfect copy. Like I said, the rpg1, which was, they produced a few, but they never went into action. The rpg1 was Russian design, and the rpg2 was a copy of the Panzerfaust 150. Do they have rpg2s in Ukraine? Oh my God, do they? They literally have thousands of rpg2s in Ukraine. Thousands of them. They have Ukrainian-made rpg2s. Professionally Ukrainian-made rpg2s. From factories that were set up during the days of the Soviet Union that specifically made Russian rpg2s in what's now Ukraine, but it used to be part of the Soviet Union. Yeah. They've also got some that were made in Uganda and Zimbabwe. They've got RPG-2s that were leftover Soviet stockpiles. They've got RPGs that are actually coming home from other countries. Apparently, Ukrainians were able to get a whole bunch of RPG-2s that were made in Ukraine that were shipped there from Syria. Very cool. The Russians gave them to the Syrians for the Syrian Civil War. The ones that were unused were apparently just recently packaged and sent back. And here I thought Syria was on Russia's side. So the RPG-2, one of the most iconic, well, it's not nearly as iconic in our country as it would be in a place like Africa, the entire continent, Asia, the entire continent. American soldiers, I am certain, are familiar with the RPG-2. If they went to Vietnam, it was required. Well, later on in the war anyway. The RPG-2 has a straight tube and the RPG-7 doesn't. The RPG-7 has a little bit of an airspace in there, and what that does is it allows some of that backflow pressure to basically bounce around and mull around on the inside of it before becoming a backblast. And then the venturi on the back as well helps it so that there's a more concentrated amount of backblast, so it'll bounce back further. It's real complicated to do that. Now I'm looking at 3 different sizes of fence post here. Each one of them has materials that can be used, combined with a hacksaw that I happen to have on me. I could use those things. Fuck it, let me show you this. You see that? See those fence pieces? Oh yeah. RPG-7 is a 40 millimeter, just like the Panzerfaust. The RPG-2, RPG-7, the PG-7 is the round that gets fired out of the RPG-7. There's also the PG-9 gets fired out of the PG-7. The PG-2 gets fired out of the RPG-2. The difference is that the holes don't line up on your ammo. Now, the situation that happened with the Panzerfaust, it had to be lined up a certain way so that the firing pin would hit the hole perfectly. And the RPG-2 copied that exact system. The bolt holes line up a little bit differently on the projectiles because they're different length of projectiles. But overall, yeah, the RPG-2 is just a knockoff Panzerfaust. Better quality, in my personal opinion. And a lot of the Swiss-made stuff that we're going to get into is based off the RPG-2. Also, some of the Dutch toys. The reason that I'm going to put these out as toys is because I'm pretty sure I took a screenshot of it. It's a toy. They was showing these Dutch boys out there with this RPG-2 looking thing, firing it, and it pops like with a cap gun. Kind of like you might do with paintball, with the paintball RPGs, or airsoft with the airsoft RPGs. This is a cap gun that literally was a RPG-7 firing. RPG-2 because it was simplified. Man, we didn't have that stuff when I was a kid. Unless it was in miniature. Anyway, the RPG-2, it's basically a fucking tube. That's your launch mechanism right there. A tube with some black powder in it. Nothing else. It's kind of like the bazooka in the fact that once it leaves the tube, it's on its own. It's traveling on its own momentum. The RPG-7 starts firing the airburst out of its jet nozzles basically as soon as it leaves. It's within a couple of meters of leaving the barrel, but it's still almost immediate. The Swiss have one that's, and this is going to sound like a bad idea because it fucking is. The Swiss have one that is shoulder mounted with a folding buttstock. What does that lead to? Broken collarbones. A lot of broken collarbones. The Russians tried it, ended up with a bunch of broken collarbones. That's part of the reason that they went with the German designs. A broken collarbone or black powder to the face really fucking suck. So the RPG-2 is a Panzerfaust type weapon, and the RPG-7 is a Panzerschreck type of weapon, but both of them are fired out of a 40mm tube. One of them's rocket propelled, one of them is just a black powder charge propelled. This is the reason that it's still produced to this day. To this day, there are new manufactured RPG-2s, as well as the fact that here in America you can get a demilled RPG-2. Yep. So you can at least familiarize yourself with it. You just can't blow yourself up with it. Thank goodness, because it's an external tube type, and that's fucking dangerous.